welcome back to Forza Horizon 4 with a bit of a challenge. Now, this is the Bugatti Chiron. It has 1,500 horsepower and all-wheel drive, and people think, for some reason, that it's the best car in the world. I don't understand why. It's slower than the Koenigsegg and the Veyron. It's heavier, so it's worse in the corners. And it, in my opinion, it doesn't look as good. However, people do seem to think that it is the fastest and best car in the world. So, I have devised a little challenge to see how true that is. We're going to do a speed trap, a speed zone. There's a very, very technical, twisty speed zone that I'm referring to. If you played Horizon 4, you probably know what it is. And we're going to see if any car can beat the Chiron for less PI. Now, this will mean they have to have a lot of grip or a lot of acceleration to make up for it. So it'll be very interesting to see, because the Bugatti does not handle particularly well, as you shall see here. Alright, this vehicle here that's just started off, well, you probably know of it. It's called the Huna truck. It's mental. It's our highest PI car that we are competing with today. And, well, as you might expect, it's pretty darn good. All-wheel drive, 900 horsepower from a twin-turbo Ford GT Le Mans engine. And it weighs absolutely nothing, so it's pretty rapid. You see, it kind of just goes and goes and goes some more. And that's very useful. It has surprisingly large amounts of grip for this. And I really, really like it. I think it's a fantastic deal. I get right on the edge there. I don't quite do a full Chiron and go off the road. But I cut it very fine because this thing likes to do four-wheel slides, as you might expect from a Ken Block drift machine. But pretty solid, pretty consistent, 70 miles an hour both ways. Alright, the next highest PI car, or I guess lowest PI car, would be the happiest one. Look at that smile on the 911 GT3. It is ready to go, this RS version. And on paper, it's rubbish, just 520 horsepower rear-wheel drive. It is a 911 GT3 RS, so it's darn good through the corners, and I mean fantastic through the corners. And this rear engine has incredible traction and natural aspiration, so there's no lag at all. It is a serious performance car, and it does a seriously good job as a result. It was remarkable just how fast it was. I was a little skeptical, but it was able to be pretty nice. And again, it's all because of the handling. Although power is important, we will see later on that power is not always the best thing. We'll see much later on in the episode that this is more of a handling circuit than anything. Handling and traction are the most important elements, and this has literal buckets of handling and traction. It is a glorious car to drive. It's actually faster than the Huna truck downhill. I think that says a lot about the little green monster. And I'm not talking about the Grinch. Now, this is the Noble M600. Annoyingly, it became dark, but luckily the temperature of the road stayed the same, so it didn't really matter. This is very, very old. It's 10 years old. It's 8 years old. Sorry, 8 years old from 2010. But it does have 650 horsepower from a twin-turbo V8. Which is pretty good. I think it's a V8. Maybe it's not. I don't remember. Point is, it's very fast at 650 horsepower. And for being several years old, the oldest car here, except for two others, which are extremely old, it was pretty darn fast. I mean, this is top of S1 class, like S1 900. There's a few S1 900s in this respected event, and I just chose this in no particular order. It surprised me. I was skeptical, thinking, oh, it's too old, it's not going to do very well to not have the handling. I was wrong. It was pretty solid. The brakes were sometimes iffy, but overall, this was a very fast and very impressive machine. It didn't have the overall speed, but 70 miles an hour downhill. That's, again, that is very impressive for such an elderly vehicle. Alright, we go from an old Noble to, well, the exact opposite, a ultra high-tech concept Jaguar CX-75, all-wheel drive, basically a Formula 1 engine in this thing. And I was thinking this should do very good. And I was a little disappointed, I will be honest. It did not have the handling that I thought it would have. I thought it would do a bit better than this. I mean, it's not terrible, it's pretty solid, but it's nowhere near as good as I was expecting. I mean, 67 miles an hour, that's... Considering the stats on this car and the fact that it redlines at 10,000 RPM, I was expecting a lot better, and I just did not get what I expected out of the Jag. It honestly was a bit disappointing. It just did not have the overall grip that the other vehicles had. Maybe I was slightly spoiled by the 911 and the Huna truck, but it did not have the traction or the handling. Primarily the handling had decent traction, but it just could not carry corner speed. It was almost like the Chiron in a way, but less powerful. And, well, that's not very good when you're trying to beat said Chiron. Okay, the Mono is here. Again, another S1 Class 900 car. However, this is the least powerful car here at a measly 280 horsepower. But again, when it lacks in power, it also lacks in weight. It is, well, the lightest, one of the lightest cars here for sure, not the lightest. And, well, that means it's very fast accelerating despite lack of weight. It doesn't reach top speed, but the corner speed is just incredible. And that's where it makes up all of its time, in the corners. It carries so much corner speed. I mean, that's over 60 miles an hour to that corner. So the CX, the Jag, was only doing 55 through there. And while it may not seem like a lot, that is a ridiculous amount for the overall pace. I was astounded by this car. I thought it would do well, but I did not expect it to be that fast. I mean, it's going 74 miles an hour down here. And this has less than 300 horsepower. So, it is an absolutely brilliant machine. It handles superbly, and it has enough speed to rival the big boys. Now that's impressive. Now, it's time for America's turn with the ACR Viper. This being the 2016 version, 645 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, which does not seem very good, but if you haven't noticed it already, the wing is stupendous, and I have often said that I love the handling of any Dodge Viper, whether it be the suicidal maniacs of the early 2000s or the precision handling of the ACRs. These things can turn like nothing else in America, or in the world for that matter. I love how they handle. And since it is a handling circuit, well, you would expect them to do pretty well despite their power shortages. It's very similar to the Mono. And yeah, it did pretty darn well, if I do say so myself. I mean, that's so much speed through there, it's not even funny. It does help when you're producing a ton of downforce, a literal ton of downforce on that rear wing. But, I mean, it really was an incredible machine through the corners, and I could not have asked for a better vehicle to show up the European and say, hey, don't make fun of us, we can actually turn right, we turn right better than you. So, take that. Ha! We are continuing with the American theme, this time with Ken Block's Ford Fiesta. Well, not his official one, but a Ford Fiesta rallycross car, 600 horsepower, all-wheel drive. It is a very fast accelerating car, the very fastest in the world, actually. So I thought it would do rather well. Unfortunately, I did not account for the slidiness of the rallycross car. You see, these things are designed to be a bit slippery around the corners in order to handle the intense cornering better on the racetrack. And that doesn't translate well to a very technical hill climb course, because you kind of get a lot of four-wheel skids, and that does not help your overall speed. Also, the incredibly short gear ratios made me start in second gear, which was an inconvenience, but we worked with it. You can see the skidding. I'm not trying to, and that means you can't carry as much corner speed, because we're trying to not slide it. So it's kind of a falling on your own sword. You have enough power and enough handling, but that handling is designed to slide, so you can't go as fast, ironically. So I thought it would do a bit better. I was a tad disappointed in it, but the handling just did not allow it to take corner speed without sliding about, and that was the Fiesta's major downside. Alright, the Lotus 311 is getting into some pretty low territory PI-wise, at just 870 PI. And, well, that's because of the handling. It's similar to the BAC Mono, but it doesn't quite handle as well, as you can see by the oversteer. This falls into the category of track toys that are very difficult to drive because they're twitchy. This is very twitchy, it's very oversteery, it's not a particularly fun car to drive. And as a result, it does not get a very good speed. Also, it got a bit of understeer towards the end, but mainly the twitchiness was terrifying. It just did not give you any confidence in the vehicle. So, yeah, it was a tough little thing to get around this course without sliding. It just didn't have the rear traction. As we said earlier, traction is super important. If you can't get that power down, you can't go around the corner very quickly, you are going to struggle. And that is what we saw here with the Lotus. So, it tried, it gave a good attempt, but it was nowhere near fast enough to get close to that Bugatti, unfortunately. The Ascari is an interesting car. It's not very powerful. It has 520 horsepower and rear-wheel drive, so it would all have to make it up through the handling. And, well, it was better than the Lotus. It was better than the Lotus, certainly, but that didn't mean it was fast, necessarily. It was a good handling car, it just didn't have very much corner speed, if you get what I mean. It was nice to drive, it just didn't have, well, enough oomph, I guess would be the improper term to use. But that's pretty much the truth of it. And I love the KZ1R. However, it's not really fast enough. It just doesn't have the pace, you know? I love it, I love the fact it's back in the game. It's just not good enough overall. It does not have the power, it has the traction, it's very good on traction, but that's because it doesn't have any power. And since it's heavier than the Lotus, and doesn't turn as well as the Lotus, it does, well, as you can quite clearly see, struggle compared to the other vehicles in this field, again, just because it doesn't have the overall ability to move as fast. Now, on paper, this Acura NSX should be very, very good. All-wheel drive, hybrid V6 producing 570-something horsepower, which is very good. All-wheel drive, electric power, initial launch, which is what we need, and then it started sliding. It did not have very good traction. It felt like it had a lot of rear-wheel drive bias, and that's why you saw that four-wheel drift, which is very cool looking, but it doesn't really help you with your speed in any way, shape, or form, and that's what we were starting to see with these lower-class cars. This is 850 right in the middle. So, it is not particularly good around the corners, but it's got decent acceleration, but not decent enough. And this is where we stopped really expecting these cars to do as well as the higher tier vehicles, as you would expect. But I decided to keep running them, see how fast the lower tier cars could go, if nothing else, just to compare them to the higher tier cars, see if we get any big surprises. But it did not like this at all. It just did not have the rear-ending grip. Which is a bit of a shame, I will be honest. Alright, now this is the opposite of the NSX. Very powerful Demon, 840 horsepower. But it's rear-wheel drive and ridiculously heavy. So, it might struggle around the corners, but I'm hoping the acceleration and just sheer power can catapult itself to a pretty good overall speed. Unfortunately, that didn't really happen. Yes, it was very quick, but it wasn't fast enough. As you can see here, it's not very good up the hill, and it doesn't have the turning. It is painfully slow around the corners, and it just didn't have the ability, if you will, to carry enough speed, and it did not have the acceleration to make up for that lack of corner speed. So, it was kind of the perfect storm of unfortunate. On paper, it's very good. Fastest accelerating car in the world right now, I believe. Certainly one of them. And it just didn't have the pace. So, yeah. It did better on this downhill run than the uphill run, but it was not what we would say, fast. Especially compared to the mighty Chiron, no less. Now, this is our twerkiest vehicle of the day, and also an example of the iconic saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because it has 1,400 horsepower and 1,400 torque. Which is very, very fast, but it all has to go through the rear wheels, and the rear wheels cannot handle that much torque. They were abysmal. The handling, it doesn't turn, as you can see there. It can't get on up. I don't think I ever went to full throttle around here, because if I did go to full throttle, I would spin the wheels up, well, up the entire course. So I have to start off in third gear just to have some non-wheel spin, and even then, it's smoking the tires all the way to the first corner. In third gear. And it doesn't stop wheel spinning. It does not stop getting wheel spin. It is a brutal car to drive. I mean, I try to go to full throttle there, and it just starts squirreling. And it just can't turn. We got up to less than 60 miles an hour up the hill, which is a new slowest. It just could not get any of its power down in any way, shape, or form. Now, the Nissan GTR, arguably considered another one of the best cars ever made for, again, some reason. And this is the third lowest PI car we have today, 820 PI, the last S1 class car we tested. And it's all-wheel drive, 500 odd horsepower, which is similar to the NSX. It just can't carry the corner speed. It's not that it's not that it slides around like the NSX. It just doesn't have the acceleration because it's not a turbocharged hybrid. This is just a turbocharged V6. And that's not very conducive to ultra-fast acceleration. It just kind of goes. And it doesn't have the amazing corner speed to, well, go any faster. It's not bad for a very low S1 class car, but it's also not very good in this challenge either, so it does, struggle, shall we say. It does struggle quite a bit. And it just didn't have the overall pace. There wasn't anything terribly wrong with it. it just could not perform as well as the rest of the field. Now, this is the oldest car on the field, 1966 GT40 Mark II. This is, on paper, very good. Lightweight, rear-wheel drive, very big tires, and long gears. I mean, it should have no wheel spin. Unfortunately, because it's a Le Mans car, the gears are a little too long for this, as in I almost never got out of first gear, which I have never had that before. The gears are so long, you never go above second. And you only go to second for a very brief portion of time. Now, it does accelerate very quickly after you get about 5,000 RPM, but then you have to shift, and it doesn't really help that much. So, yeah, it kind of exists in this weird world of, it goes over 200 miles an hour, 210 miles an hour to be exact, but because the gear ratios are so long for the Mouzlon straights, it cannot accelerate fast enough for what we need, which is a very interesting conundrum that I did not expect to see. But yeah, it had the handling, but it did not have the acceleration, which is a first. That a car could not accelerate fast enough to be any good. And finally, the lowest PI car of the day is the Hot Wheels Bone Shaker. It's also the second least powerful. It is 402 horsepower. But I was hoping to make up some time. This is an A-class car now. Admittedly a very high A-class, 795, but still an A-class car. And if you'll notice, it has the biggest rear tires from standard on any car in any Forza game ever. If you upgrade them, you can get 465s, but now these are a measly 375s on the rear. So it has an enormous amount of traction, which is good for this. And it was surprisingly good. It was never going to challenge the top. It just doesn't have the sheer power. Maybe if they put 600 horsepower in it, because this thing can easily handle another 102 more horsepower, it might be able to compete, but it just doesn't have the power. It just has too much grip for too little power to be any good at this. That being said, it was able to embarrass a few S1 class cars, or an S1 class car and a higher A class car, which, not bad. I'm very proud of the little Bone Shaker considering how little horsepower it actually has. However, our winner has to be the Dodge Viper. It was the lowest PI car to actually beat the Chiron. It did 70.2 miles an hour, as you can see on this little chart here. It is only 0.2 of a mile an hour faster, but it is faster. And which means a Chiron just got eviscerated, got humiliated by a rear-wheel drive American car with less than 650 horsepower. It is fantastic. It has a PI of just 895, which is not even the top of S1 class. And it's all because of that massive wing and the racing suspension. From standard, it is a purebred race car with enough power to boost it out of the corners, to beat that show, which I'm glad America finally won something about turning. Take that, Europe. But, yeah, that is going to be it for this episode of Forza Horizon 4, and I'll be back with more.